Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. It is Wednesday, September 7th, and the club regular season has come to an end. The Pro Championships over Labor Day weekend, wrapping up the club season, finalizing the bids. We know the regional bids to nationals. There's going to be some drama, we know that. And we're going to break it all down on today's show. Truck Stop getting the win over Pony 15-11. Pretty strong performance from Truck Stop once again as they now sweep both the US Open and the Pro Championships. 2 legs of the Triple Crown done, trying to win the national championship to complete the Triple Crown for the first time since Pony did it in 2018. Molly Brown wins their second straight Pro Championships after blowing out Phoenix in a game that was really never close. And in the mixed final, Dragon Thrust completes an insane comeback after trailing 8-2 at halftime to Hybrid. They come back to win on Universe and get the win at the Pro Championships heading into the postseason. So, Keith, a kind of a crazy weekend with some big surprises and a lot to kind of look ahead to the postseason.
It's hard to think of things that happened the way that we expected them to happen, to be honest. Sure, there were a couple finalists who were where we expected them to be, but they didn't necessarily get there the way that we thought that they would. The bid picture got shaken up a little bit. So there was a lot of unpredictable stuff, which I think makes sense when we feel like we have a condensed season. There's just there's been a little more variance introduced to the whole process. The club regular season, we hardly knew ye. It just came and went. So it's been a weird sensation, but suddenly we're going into the postseason and we have a bunch of tremendous results to kind of look back at. Charlie, are you watching the Game of Thrones prequel, House of the Dragon?
I've heard about it, but no, I'm not watching it, nor have I ever watched Game of Thrones.
So for those of you who have not yet watched it and don't want the third episode of the series spoiled for you, I'm giving you your spoiler warning right now. I'm going to give you a couple seconds. Go ahead, turn it off. All right. If you're still with us, I'm going to spoil episode 3. So they build up a villain. He's called the Crab Feeder. And in episode 3, he is felled by one of the main characters, but their fight happens entirely off screen. Like they get disappear into a cave, and then the good guy comes back, and he has like the severed body of the villain character, and you're like, oh well, I guess they built that character up for nothing. That is the opposite of what happened here this season. Like you got every gory detail in front of you for the totally wacky results that we got at the end of the year. It's wild. If you're back now, the spoilers have concluded.
No more spoilers.
I'll even try and get the video editor to mark this moment that there was a Game of Thrones spoiler in here.
So lots to get to today. I think we should talk first about this Dragon Thrust team that is now kind of developing a bit of a reputation for being hard to kill. I mean, you can get ahead on them and then they come back. They came back to beat Shame last year at Nationals. They came back to beat Amp earlier this season, back at the kind of like a preseason type tournament when they were down big. And then they come back and they end up beating Hybrid 12-11 in a game that Hybrid never should have lost. I mean, never should have. You never see teams come back from 6 down at half. Like, it is exceedingly rare to see an 8-2 lead at halftime end up in a loss. But think about that. They gave up a 10-3 run in the second half to lose. And I mean, Dragons started playing like a no-mark zone, and Hybrid was just like, you know what? We're just going to chuck it up there 50-50 and, keep doing that over and over again. Hybrid's going to have to learn how to close out games if they want to win a national title. And they have a lot of talent. They're a very good team, but that was a rough finish to the Pro Championships for them.
It certainly was. I mean, it was pretty shocking to watch Dragon Thrust get absolutely trounced in the beginning of that game. I was like, whoa, what am I
True.
seeing? Now this hybrid team, I think people have begun to familiarize themselves with hybrid. They are athletic, they're high flying, they're shot takers. So they have the propensity to run you over, but they also have the propensity to go on bad runs. And now these were extreme ends of the spectrum on both of those sides, and they happened back to back. So not exactly how you draw it up. It's hard to feel like they are not related to one another. And a great job for Dragon Thrust for making the adjustments and sticking with them. I mean, they could not figure out a way to slow down the quick strike offense that hybrid was bringing in the first half. And yeah, letting them make the mistakes in the second half was totally the right move. Forcing them to try and be patient. Dragon Thrust had a lot of, hybrids had a lot of changes, particularly to the players that are getting a lot of touches on the disc. I mean, you look at who's getting the touches for them right now. It's like Tracy Lowe and Ray Liu, and they're joining the likes of Adam Stopberg, and Justin Perticone. Like some of the players who have crossed over from last year's team are joined by new faces. They're missing Connor Lucas, who was the offensive player of the year last year, and you could tell that the backfield chemistry it hasn't quite coalesced yet for hybrid, and Dragon Thrust pounced on it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think certainly a story from any regular season tournament is that, there's going to be some missing pieces. There's going to be some teams who are not yet where they're going to be in a few weeks. I mean, Pony, for example, has only had one relatively short practice since Worlds. They took 3 weeks off, and then they came out, and I think you could tell that they were not really like that sharp. I mean, they're still incredibly talented, so they made the final, but they played a much sharper, much more practice together truck stop team, because a lot of the players on that truck team play together with Breeze. Pony doesn't have that same connection. I mean, obviously there's plenty of Empire players on Pony, but some of the biggest players on that team, Mickle, Kocher, Keegan, I mean, there's a lot of Pony players that did not play on the New York Empire. And so I think you can see that they were not where they're going to be. That doesn't take anything away from Truck, and we'll get to that. But I think those things matter in context. But I think mostly what I take away from this weekend is that Mixed is wide open right now. With Mixtape losing to BFG and Amp and Dragon playing super tight, and then in a weird way, Hybrid and Dragon playing super tight. And we know, that Noise is going to be there at Nationals. And, I just think that there's a lot of teams in the mixed division. I mean, Classy made the semifinals here at Pro Champs. A lot of teams in the mixed division that have a realistic path to winning a national championship if things go their way. There's no clear, obvious favorite. I mean, I still think it's Mixtape, but there's enough question marks out there and enough weird, strange results from the regular season that it feels like a kind of an open year for who wants to kind of get sharp at the right time and go win.
I wonder if the real winner of this weekend is the Seattle duo. They're sitting there like, oh, these teams might eat themselves before they even get to the finals to meet up with whichever one of us has made it, or into the semifinals to battle it out with both of us. I mean, obviously, I don't think BFG and Mixtape feel that confident against the rest of the field. But, seeing the inconsistencies from so many of their top contenders might boost their confidence a little bit that hey, we really are the title favorites, and everybody else is going to have to come and get it.
What do you think about Amp this weekend? They go 5-1, only the one loss by 1 point to Dragon.
A bit disappointing to see that loss, but they had some sticky results along the way, like a lot of close wins. They were missing Jordan Ryan to start the weekend, and I think he was there by the time that they were into the bracket, but they're missing him, and obviously he's a big part of their offense. I think that had a lot of domino effects for them. A lot of players who had to handle that you might prefer to cut, getting Adam Grossberg a lot more involved, and Paul Owens a lot more and a lot less defense, and Rahal Mazafari back around the disc more. That those might be kind of like the cascading effects of missing Ryan. And then they also are missing Henry Ying, who was out for the entire weekend. So with those things in mind, I still think that this is a top level team, but you got to be a little worried about and this is a theme for pretty much every team that we're seeing in the mixed division is that lack of consistency, right? We've seen them take a loss at every tournament. And, I think after Dragon Thrust won finals, maybe that makes Lucina Dragon look a lot different, but Dragon hadn't been that great up until that point. And so it was a bit surprising for me to see Amp take an L to them, even though it was just by a goal. So that there's work to be done for this Amp team, but I still like the ceiling.
And how about Classy making semis despite winning just 2 games on the weekend?
It's all about which games you win in the end, right? In the tournament format.
Yeah. They beat Darkwing 11-7, and then they beat Sprocket in quarters 14-12. Otherwise, kind of took sizable losses to the top level teams. Kind of a disastrous weekend for Sprocket, who loses that game to Classy and then has essentially a bid play-in game against Public Enemy, with the winner likely to get the last bid, and they got blown out. Interesting there, but I don't think Classy is probably a team we're going to see at Nationals, but cool to see them make a run to semis.
I think that they maybe have the possibility, they're a nice sleeper team, but I'm not buying. If you look at it's a rare case where when you look at their results from the tournament just on the score reporter, it gives you a better picture of than looking at their placement. They beat a Sprocket team that was allergic to anything but close games, basically. I mean, they've just played universe point game after universe point game, always tight matchups. They continue to fall in holes pretty much every game and then fight their way out of them. And then they finally ran out of gas. Classy, compliments to them for taking care of business against Sprocket, but that felt more like a game that Sprocket kind of handed them. I'm surprised Classy was able to hold up this well. It really felt like the bottom part of the mixed division was a big step away from everybody else. So that gap was closer than we thought. But it's not like I'm buying them as the 4th best team at this tournament.
I mean, Sprocket's day one was great. They beat Noise and Dragon, and then they lose to Classy, and they have their biggest loss, I mean, arguably the season, given the stakes, against Public Enemy. Interesting team. A team that's going to be troublesome at regionals.
We'll talk more about them in the when we talk more about bids.
Let's save that. All right, let's talk women's division. Molly Brown backs it up, 2nd straight Pro Championships win, 15-11 final over Phoenix, and really the game didn't even feel that close. They were way out in front. The Phoenix O-line could not throw simple reset passes. I mean, they were just turning it over on swings, not squaring up to who they were throwing to, just trying to throw a sideways pass with the hip squared forward and just not hitting the swing. Drops, total kind of collapse of the O-line. I mean, the defense still looked pretty good for Phoenix, and they clearly are a good team. They made it to finals. They were clearly the 2nd best team at the tournament. But Molly Brown with a big bounce back after kind of a disappointing showing out west. Keith, neither of us even picked them to make the final after what we saw from their results last weekend. And then they were clearly the most impressive team. I mean, they blew Sixers out by 6 in semis and looked totally in control against Phoenix in that final.
Well, don't forget, it's easy to forget, Phoenix actually came out and broke twice to start that game. So it wasn't really ever close, maybe for a second, but it started out, it was Phoenix that looked like they were going to run away with it. And then it was all Molly Brown from there, who was, clearly the most impressive team at the tournament. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You can certainly check out some of the reporting that was done from the tournament to get a sense of what this team was about. But they play with a ton of pace. They are really aggressive defenders when they're matched up. They create pressure. And when they have the disc moving, when they can really open up the field, they have players downfield who are tremendous throwers. So, they hit Lisa Picaithley and Manu Cardenas and Claire Chastain in space, and those players will crush you with that. They were the real deal. And I'll be curious to see what kind of how much they can maintain this. Like we said, we've seen them win the Pro Championships before, but the check mark again for the talent. The Molly Brown talent is just unquestionable. They are good enough. It's just going to be all about being a consistent team, having their heads in the right space when it's go time, because that's what could catch up with them. They have plenty of talent. And adding Valeria Cardenas, she didn't quite have O&D. Like it's hard to say. They have a bunch of players who play both ways, Valeria included, as well as Manu. But being able to send out those two and Claire Chastain on defense, Alika Johnston was out there on defense some. That just ignites their D-line offense. It takes the pressure off of players who might be more turnover prone or maybe aren't ready to be in the biggest throwing positions. It really eases up the pressure on them, and I think really lends Molly Brown another dimension.
I think it's unquestionable that this team has the best chance to win a title of any Molly Brown iteration that we have seen, because they are adding. Well, they're not technically adding. Right. They had Vale last year, but it feels like they're adding Valeria this year. Certainly, they're getting a World Games year pair of Cardenas sisters. They're also getting World Games Claire Chastain. Lisa P is playing at a really high level. I just think that they have the depth and the top end talent to be competitive with anybody, including Fury. I think it's very possible for them to beat Fury. I just don't know if I trust the O-line enough against the great defense that Fury is going to put up. And certainly they didn't pass the West Coast test at all a week ago. But I think it's obvious enough that they significantly stepped up their level of play. It's not like Sixers and Phoenix are pushover teams. These are very good teams. So I think for Molly, it's a good step. This team will not be satisfied, nor should they be, until they win a title. And you kind of think about what's the window here for this team?
That's part of
they're in the prime time. Now, who knows, right? If the Cardenas sisters play with them forever, then you're going to have title window for 10 years. But if they don't, which seems more probable than not, and where's Claire at? How many more years of peak Claire are you going to get? This is the time that they have to go out and they have to go get the W. I think they have a year or two right now where it's really the best chance.
And look at their place in the meta. Before they had to compete with Fury and a top flight Brute Squad and a top flight Riot. And while Phoenix and Sixers are good and maybe a complete Brute Squad is good, flip side, they're a new team, but obviously really talented. That it doesn't feel like Molly Brown is kind of trying to break their way in, so to speak, against those teams. If it's going to be a down year for Brute, and it is obviously a down year for Riot, a down couple of years as they kind of rebuild, then that changes the pressure on Molly Brown to be as good as they have to be. They might be able to even win games when they're not playing well. This to me looks like the most athletic team in the division. They're the speed, the power, it's all there, including from their new recruits. So that is an advantage that I don't know that we have ever necessarily said about them before. But again, this is a team that it's hard to say I believe in them until you see them do it. You know what I mean?
Of course. They've been good enough to have competitive games with these top teams in the past, and they've often laid an egg. So it's about the mental side of the game for them, and it has been for a long time. But this is the most talented iteration, and you're right, Keith. This is the most, relative to the other teams in the field, the highest that they've been.
Agreed. And
I think there's a very good argument to say that it's Fury 1, Molly 2 in terms of talent and chance to win.
I certainly feel that way. And extra credit to them. Not enough. We probably haven't talked about this enough. Extra credit for them. They just played an elite level tournament on the West Coast the weekend before, and then traveled cross country and came out and whipped ass. That is that you get extra points for that.
You certainly do. I think the question, of course, is, when you look at the results from last weekend, Let me pull them up so I can share them quickly. The mostly wins, they lost by 3 to Flipside, and they lost by 8 to Fury. 15-7 they lost that game. Like, maybe Fury's in a class of their own. Possible.
That is possible, but also Fury's been playing together for months, and that's Molly Brown's first tournament.
Good point.
So, a lot of times it can feel like Molly Brown has peaked too early, and maybe we're seeing that again, but it doesn't quite line up that way right now.
And I didn't think they looked like they were peaking too early type performance.
I didn't get that sense either.
They were making some mistakes. They have things to fix. The O still needs work. Consistency, like reducing the number of turnovers. Like, I think there's still plenty for them to get better. Phoenix goes 4-2. They lose to Mali. They kind of lost in sort of inconsequential but still surprising game to Schwa. They had already won the pool, so I'm not sure what to make of that. But they made a statement with 15-7 win over Brute Squad, and then a 15-5 win over Scandal in semis after losing to Scandal earlier this season in kind of like a showcase game. Well, I think Phoenix has established who, in fact, the best team on the East Coast is, and it is definitely going to be Phoenix. But that was not a good performance against Brute. And what do they need to do to get right?
Against Mali.
I said Brute. I meant Mali. Yes.
It was a great performance against Brute, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. There was a lot of weird stuff going on in that Phoenix game. They were just missing a lot of easy looks. And in fact, when I talked to somebody from Scandal after their loss to Phoenix, and they felt kind of the same way, like, oh, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot, and it's frustrating to not, get to really feel like you got to challenge yourselves and your opponent in the same way. What went around, what goes around came around for Phoenix, as they had the same issues against Molly Brown, just couldn't get started. It's they still look like they're trying to figure out how best to integrate Gamey Groom and play without Lindsay Sue. And I feel like they miss Sue, they miss Ann Worth, they miss those kind of like really dynamic cutters who also can activate the offense once they get the disc. I feel like that feels like a little bit like it's lacking, especially because they want Mex on defense. Like, maybe Mex could be that player on offense. I'm not really sure. But that part of the game feels like it's missing a little bit. Like, they have good handlers. They have fantastic cutters who are great athletes, great finishers. But it's a lot to ask of Karen Earhart to step up into that role, or Ella Youngs to step up into that role. Like, these are pretty inexperienced players relative to the
Youngs
teams they have to go up
touched the
against.
disc in the final.
Right. Ella Youngs scored what, 1 goal?
And just like was the non-factor.
Absolutely. Which, again, credit to Molly Brown's fantastic defense. I mean, they really are extremely athletic. And that was a good answer for Phoenix. And I wonder if this is a bad matchup. I wonder if this is just not a team that Phoenix is going to want to see at Nationals, because Claire Chastain seemed to do a nice job with Gamey Groom. And a lot of these matchups they were able to get the better of. But I don't know if it was nerves for Phoenix or what, but it was a subpar effort. I don't think they would argue.
Here's my pitch, okay? There's 2 things. One is, like, you need to just throw and catch. Like, I mean, fundamentally, like, a lot of the errors were self-inflicted. And, like, yeah, credit to Molly for putting on pressure, but, when you're just throwing away simple swing passes, that's a fixable problem. You just need to practice. But the other thing is, switching Mexstroth and Groom on the lines would make a lot of sense. I actually thought Cammie looked best when she was playing defensive points, which wasn't that often.
A shock, to be sure.
I mean, of course, like an all-world, all-decade, all-time defender in the division. And Mexstroth was probably more effective playing offense after the turn for the D-line than she was as an actual defender. She's a good defender, especially in the deep space. But I would rather see Mex get those reps on O and Groom get those reps on D, and then you cross them over as necessary. But like, they both feel like they're playing slightly out of position. I think Mexstroth is a better offensive player than defensive, and vice versa for Groom. It would be a sensible switch to make. And I think it could provide some of that connective tissue that you're talking about for their offense to have Mex being your initiating cutter. And she's obviously an incredible deep threat. Not that Groom is not, but Mexstroth is a much better thrower than Cammy. And Groom is a better defender in kind of like at any position than Mexstroth. So I think it would make a lot of sense to switch their spots on the lines. But, we'll see what happens. But I mean, it's the kind of game where it's like, the thing is, I talk about this all the time. Phoenix can win and win all against all these teams, whatever, win 15-4, 15. The games that matter are the ones against the top teams. And it's not like Phoenix has had that many opportunities in big spots at big tournaments like this to be in the final, to be even sometimes in the semis. They're relatively new to the elite ranking of the division. And their defense played solidly, but their offense was really bad. And it's the kind of thing that's going to make you go back to the drawing board and say, like, this is the kind of team we have to beat at nationals. They're not worried about whether they're going to get out of pool play.
That's the challenge that they face. And the danger that they're in is figuring out, okay, what do we believe in and keep faith in? And what do we need to change? Whether it's personnel, whether it's strategy, whether it's how you're practicing. And can they survive this moment if they're in a spot like this again? If they're in quarterfinals and they're down 8-5 to Sixers or whatever, are they going to bounce back, or are they going to be like, oh no, we're choking, we're missing on basic resets or whatever? Like, can they recover from that stuff? Because this stuff can shake you or it can make you. So that it's on them to figure out what to do from here, because it's not an easy. There's no easy answer here. It may be different depending on your situation, your personnel, your personality. So it's questions for the leadership to address.
Let's talk about the men's division. Truck Stop getting another big tournament win. They take down Pony 15-11 and looked convincing doing so. Their O-line was fantastic, as it has been all year. Their defense did enough to disrupt what Pony was trying to do, and I thought they were excellent, clinical offensively after the turnover, and just got an all-around complete performance once again from a Truck Stop team that has very obviously taken steps forward from last year. They have done such a great job of getting these young players that they've added to the roster integrated into the lineup and having a real impact on the team every game. And like, they have a realistic path to winning a title, despite, I think, being a little bit overall less talented than Machine and Pony and Ring. The thing is, their offense is so tough to take the disc from. And their defense is not amazing, but it's good enough to get a break or two a game, and that may be enough.
We knew they had the great offense. We saw it at the U.S. Open, and when they won the U.S. Open, their D-line played all right, not great. And this was a much stronger performance from the defense, and that's the thing to take heart in. True. If you're DC. I mean, Cranston, Hess, Troy Holland just does thankless shutdown work. What he was doing against Jack Williams when they played Ring was just awesome. They were getting great play from Frederick Farah and Moussa Dia, like players who aren't big name players, but were able to hold up very strong against Pony's superstars. And that is a recipe we've seen work well for D lines. Like I don't want to say faceless army for them, but they were sending out a number of different bodies and getting good results. A ton of credit to their coaching staff for figuring out the best way to make the most with the least of these elite level teams. They have a weird personnel grouping for offense. They're replete with these skilled handlers, and they said, okay, let's build a system that emphasizes those skills and takes advantage of that, which also happens to be different than what everybody else is doing. We don't have to just run dominators. We don't have to just almost side stack ISO our super awesome cutter. Like, that's not what our team is built for. We have a bunch of skillful players. Let's make the windows small. Let's move the disc quickly and go out there and dribble a thing into the end zone or whatever. It's a high wire act, but they have the goods. They have the agility. They make it across the wire every time, no matter how many times you gasp along the way.
They had 4 O-line turns against Pony. Pony went 2 for 4. Truck went 5 for 6 on break chances. So pretty interesting. No Babbitt for Jeff Pony. No Jeff Babbitt for Pony. Jeff Pony is the new team name, actually. And so we'll see what happens when he gets re-added, because he's obviously just such a dynamic piece for them on offense, and provides, I think, importantly, better defense after the turn. Pony's O-line getting broken 5 of 6 times is not good. But at the end of the day, Truckstop was only recorded to have 1 block in that game. Cranston got 1 block. That's it. Now that understates the quality of the defense, but it also speaks to the fact that this is not a team that's generally going to get a bunch of takeaways with like crazy layout Ds, although they have some players capable of that. I think, against these elite opponents, it's about forcing weird resets and stuff like that.
Yeah, they were missing your favorite handler defender from DC wasn't there. No Jasper Tom. No, that's your guy.
Yeah, and he's not only is my guy, like I think he's one of the guys in the division right now at that position. The Truck offense is so good. Like at one point I was on replay producing one of these games, and I just replayed the entire point so you could just watch their offense like do it again, because it was like all throws under stall 3, all like really crisp throwing, great movement, spacing, timing, and just complete annihilation of the defense. And so it was just a lot of fun to watch.
I know there was some talk about boring ultimate, and you can play great offense without it being boring, and it doesn't have to be all Hucks either. Those are not the prereqs for exciting ultimate. I think Truck has shown that there are other ways to achieve that effect, and they do play a very aesthetically pleasing technical game, and it works to their strengths. They certainly can attack in the deep space. Once they sucker you in with that, you'll get Cole Jurek or Boxley or Tyler Monroe or Greg Wodach. Those are the primary deep cutters really for them, and they'll even send. I've seen Johnny Malks take off a couple of times. He scored that one and then did that weird punching the air run celebration. Was that a Fortnite dance? I don't know what the kids do, but so they're up for a couple of those things, and they do look like they're having a lot of fun, which is a good sign for them. But this is a team, I will say, we said Molly Brown didn't quite feel like this. Truck feels like they could be peaking a little early.
Apparently there was a Pony player who will go unnamed here that was yelling on the field, "Classic Truck peaking too soon. This is the best you're going to be."
Oh no, I can 100% guess who that was.
You might not.
Maybe not.
You might not.
Maybe not.
Anyway, I think you said it already. They are a high wire offensive act. I do worry that this offense is not going to find itself being fully sustainable when we are in locked in mode at Nationals. That said, the handler core has shown me that they can do things different ways, right? It's not an entirely small ball type lineup. They do have players who will take shots and complete them. Rowan has been primarily that guy. Like, he will dink and dunk, and then he'll launch a 70-yard forehand. And I think having that dynamic ability to their offense is big. Christian Boxley's playing the best ultimate I've ever seen him playing. I think Truck looks really good. I just think, unfortunately for them, it's going to end up looking a lot like what we saw from the DC Breeze. They're just not quite good enough. They're just not quite talented enough to get past the ponies in the rings of the division when we get to the semifinals of Nationals.
That's probably true. That's probably true. And I could see them losing a 4-turnover game or whatnot. Like the two teams combined have 4 turnovers. I could see that being their fate because the offense is great, but just a mistake or two here and the D-line can't pick it up for them. But they also just bludgeoned Ring. Like I think the elite teams in the division have shown flaws. And so if they are in the right spot and they keep playing at this high level, they might be there when one of those teams is not having their best game. Or who knows? Maybe it's Machine finally does well in the back end of a tournament and they knock off Ring or something and they get Machine and then they get a Machine letdown game. Well, we'll talk more about Machine. But who knows how the cards are going to fall, but it does look like there are some really good teams up top. Rhino is a team that could shock somebody and then lose to Truck. Like I could see those same type of results playing out. So I think Truck is your easy number 1 team in the power rankings. I just don't think there's a way to argue around that. But they have the tools, but it's just going to be a big lift for them. And on the one hand, we've seen the Triple Crown Tour. If you win the first 2 legs, you're usually in a pretty good spot to try and win the third one. But it's a weird year. We have Pony and probably Jack Williams taking a big break going into this tournament. You got Machine and Sakai who don't look like they've come near their peaks yet. So it's far from a sure thing for Truck right now.
Yeah, I mean, Ring gets an incomplete for me because Jack and Ryan didn't look well integrated. They didn't look totally focused. Jack Williams played one of the worst games I've seen him play in a long time. And it makes sense. They're coming off the Empire season and how focused they were there, and like people need a break and people haven't been practicing necessarily. So now it's lock-in time. And I do not expect we're going to see Jack Williams and Ryan Osgar have kind of the minimal impact that we saw from them against this Truck team when we get around to the national championships. On the other hand, I think you got to believe what you see. And what we see is that Truck is clearly a semifinals quality team with a realistic path to a title through a game where their O-line only has 3 turnovers and their D-line gets 1 to 2 breaks, and they could win against anybody. Because it's not like Ring and Pony have looked unbeatable. If anything, since the beginning of the season, it feels like we've had a little bit of compression amongst kind of where teams are. And sure, you can say all you want, and let's remember, last year, right? Ring didn't play until the series. Pony didn't look good until the series. And then they looked good at regionals, and then they looked really good at nationals, as did Ring. And then they, played an incredibly close, highly contested final, but were obviously the 2 best teams at the tournament. I will not be shocked if that's what we see again. I still don't think I'm going to change my picks. I think that those are the teams that are going to meet in the final unless they find each other meeting up in semis because of seeding, which is possible.
I feel a little worried about Ring, although I can't really put my finger on why. I mean, it's the same freaking team.
Jack and Ryan are going to save them. Jack and Ryan are going to save them. 2 of the best 5 players in the division right now.
I guess, you know what? It just wasn't a clutch enough moment for Jack. Just really, well, it wasn't.
That's right.
Big game Jack isn't showing up for small games, You
think Jack is going to bring it at the pro championships?
No. I think we found out no is the answer to that question. But it's a little weird to see them get blown out and then, after a chance to get some more reps and okay, we're going to take a real shot at Truck this time. They still lose like that. That's a little concerning.
It was a very close game,
but a loss. That wouldn't a close game in semis isn't going to cut it.
All right, what's up with this Joker Machine team? What is going on with these guys? For the second straight tournament, they win their first 3 games in pool play, and then they lose 2 straight games. Now, okay, they lose to Bravo. Bravo's good, all right? They lose to Dig. They beat Dig 15-7. 15-7 at the U.S. Open, and then they lose to them 14-12. What's going on with this Machine team? What are we seeing here? I got to be honest. They feel a little fraudulent, Keith. They feel a little fraudulent because as great as the talent is on this team, if you can't show up into the bracket games and at least play a good game and beat the teams you're supposed to beat, I do not know. I cannot trust you at nationals.
Does it feel?
I have zero trust in this
Does it
team.
feel like they lost their edge? Like that's the vibe that I'm getting. I mean, they look like a team that won a title, and not in a good way. Like they look like a team that thinks that they won the title. Like they got confused. Like, oh yeah, we're machine. You know, we don't have to worry about any of this stuff. We're champions, but they're not. You know, like they I don't see a lot of urgency from this team. You know, I see they feel a little lackadaisical, and that's not the machine that I recall. You know, I feel like I recall the strong machine teams having a chip on their shoulder and, you know, feeling a little disrespected by everybody. And I don't see that machine right now. And I think that they are going to want that machine when they get to nationals. They look a little too comfy. And I don't know why that is, because they keep losing to teams that they probably shouldn't lose to.
They are top tier talent. I mean, they have as much talent as Ring and Pony. The thing is, they have yet to show up for bracket. They've just laid an egg at both of their tests this year. So now I'm supposed to believe that they're going to have it at nationals. To their credit, they played well in the bracket last year after having a horrible pool play performance at nationals. Well is relative, but like they showed up. I just have a hard time trusting the team. Very weird team. Very strange results this season.
Yeah, there's been a lot of change for them too. Not a ton of like the big names, but they lost a lot of vets, like really experienced guys who maybe were helping steer the ship. They've had some changes in coaching. So, you know, getting used to that sort of thing might be a new change for them. But
how do you come out and beat Pony, Rhino, Sockeye, and then lose to Dig? That makes no sense.
Dig's loving this. Dig's loving this segment.
I mean, Dig's a good team. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they're just chumps. But I'm sorry, it was 15-8 that Machine beat Dig, not 15-7. But I mean, I don't know. I just feel like these teams are on different tiers.
I don't disagree
Pony
with
was
that.
in a tight game against Dig at halftime, and then they were like, no, we're the better team, and they pulled away to an easy 15-12 win.
Machine just hasn't done anything to inspire you yet. It's all on paper for them right now. You know, we know that they're talented. We've seen the scattered results of their individual players, of the team in a given round at a tournament. Oh, they beat a really good team here, or last year they did X, Y, and Z, or the year before that. But like, there's no big results to back it up. There's no reason to believe in this team in the clutch right now, aside from what's on paper. Like, we know the dudes on this team are good, right? We know the players on this team are talented. There's no question about that. So for them, it's bringing it all together. I mean, there's a lot of parallels between this team and Molly Brown for me, except that they're not even getting the regular season wins. I mean, maybe they're trying to avoid peaking too early. You know, I don't know. They also were at Worlds. No, wait, they weren't. So I don't know. What's the excuse?
Okay, but let's talk about no excuses. 1 seed overall Sockeye gets close win over Condors, comfortably beats Double Wide, and then loses 4 straight games. Machine, Ring, Rhino, and then Machine for a second time. Now, you know, the teams they lost to, good teams. But are you worried about this Sockeye team?
Sure am.
I thought we were going to see a team. I thought we were going to see a team that had a chance to win multiple championships. And now I'm not so sure about that.
They were missing some people, right? I know they were missing Trent Dillon, among others. But you look at the names who are big contributors for them, and it's not the same folks who were necessarily in key roles for them when they won a title. I mean, I think that there's been kind of a quiet turnover for this team, and they flat out just might not be as good. You know, the rest of the division got really good, and I don't know if they kept up in the arms race. You're never going to write off a team with Dylan Freechild and Matt Rader, right? Like they can beat anybody, and I think we all know that. But why right now could you stump for them as a title contender? What have they done to prove that?
Nothing so far. I mean, they have wins over Rhino from Summer Solstice back in June, but they didn't win any of their tester games this weekend. They're, at the competitive point in the season, they are 0 for 4 in the games that you would say are like tests for quarters plus teams. And that's not a good sign. Yes, sure, caveats all around for players missing, but everybody's missing players this weekend.
You got to tear them down at this point. You got to put them a tier down.
I think that's right. I don't think they're in the championship tier. I think they're in the semis hopeful tier at this point. Interesting stuff. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're talking bids, and we're talking more pro championships for subscribers in our Out the Back bonus segment. Become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at multiworld.com/subscribe. We'll be right back.
I want to take a moment to thank Sunset Lake CBD, one of the sponsors of Deep Look. Sunset Lake CBD is a hemp farm located just outside of Burlington, Vermont. For years, Sunset Lake produced milk for Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and in 2019, they diversified and started growing hemp for CBD. Now, Sunset Lake CBD believes that their farm table approach is the best way to get you high-quality CBD products that are responsibly produced and actually work. Sunset Lake CBD crafts topicals, gummies, oils, and more to help with stress, aches, and sometimes most importantly, sleep. After a tournament like Pro Champs, I often have to fly back overnight. I'm lucky that Charlie gets me out of there early so I could be home with my family for a little bit longer. But I get home at 1 a.m. after driving back from the airport, sometimes later. It was like pouring rain when I got back. Not the most conducive for getting a restful night's sleep after nights of sleeping 4 to 6 hours at most while working 12-hour days. So I get pretty fried, and I try to throw my sleep schedule off too much, so I just get up at the regular time the next morning. But man, I need a restful night's sleep the night after that, and that's where I get my Sunset Lake CBD gummies. I need the help. I need to make sure that I get that melatonin so I get a nice restful night's sleep, defray my nerves, and get me back in the fight the next day so I can start grinding on the recaps and all that kind of good stuff and start recording the show for folks like you. CBD helps me do that. So Sunset Lake's crucial to my success after a tournament. Check them out today at sunsetlakecbd.com and use coupon code DEEPLOOK. That's one word, DEEPLOOK, for 20% off all products. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer owned, Vermont grown.
Welcome back to Deep Look. Well, the rankings are final. We have the Pro Championships results in the books. USA Ultimate put out the rankings on Sunday night, or Monday night, actually. They got a couple corrections, and then once that was all said and done, they locked them in on Tuesday, so they are official. Keith, I know you've had a chance to really take a look and break everything down. Take us through the bids. I think let's start with this. Where did bids change hands and how? And then we'll talk about the individual bids in each division and what it means.
So there were two bids after all the final math was done that changed hands following the Pro Championships. One in the mixed and one in the men's division. In the mixed division, the Northeast lost a bid and the South Central earned a bid. While in the men's division, the Northwest lost a bid and the Southwest earned a bid. There were a number of teams in the mix in every division and a number of regions that were a part of that they didn't earn a bid or didn't lose a bid and were on the block for losing a bid. So it was a little more dramatic than it sounds. But even just a bid changing hands, some cases in what felt like basically a play-in game, it led to a pretty dramatic weekend. I mean, people were in our Discord round by round asking about what kind of score does this team need to earn a bid? It was a wild ending to the season.
It certainly was. And we already mentioned Sprocket having that game against Public Enemy that was basically for the last bid, goes to the South Central. And a couple things moving around here at the margins. Some second order effects as well. So you never know exactly what it's going to all mean, because if a team plays really well, then teams they played earlier in the season are going to get pulled up as well because their results look a little bit better. And so now we have things all set. So Keith, I think probably would be most interesting is to talk about where are the regions that are going to be feeling flush and who's going to be feeling like they're missing out and coming up short a bid or two.
Well, I'll tie this together because before we move on, like, it's underselling the drama of Sprockets weekend to just like, oh, they lost 15-9 to Public Enemy, and
they came all the way up.
Yeah, first they went out and they beat Noise and Dragon Thrust both on Universe Point back-to-back games and gained like 70 points from that, and it was all smiles and laughter. Then they win on Universe Point against Fleet. Okay, you're starting to worry a little bit. Then they lose to Class E by 2. That takes away another chunk of points, and then they get blown up by Public Enemy in their only not close game of the entire weekend, win or loss. They lose to Public Enemy, and that tanks all of their points. Then they almost crawl back into it with a win over Shame on Double Game Point on the final game of the weekend. So, like, there are a million ways that this weekend could have gone different for them, whether it's winning by more in their wins or not losing by as much. It was a up and down, a roller coaster if you could have followed along game by game for Sprocket. And their actual weekend, like, win and loss kind of played out the same way. So perhaps it's fitting. But they finished just outside. Moondog is the team right above them in the Northwest, like barely finishing ahead of them. Probably, I'm sure there were some second order effects involved, but dramatic. And to lead that right in, the Northeast mix, we're no strangers to them having dramatic regionals. I mean, it's kind of a calling card of the Northeast. They'll have 2 bids for the teams there, including Sprocket. So, you look at,
it's going to be wild.
Yeah, you look at Sprocket and Slow, and those have to feel like the favorites for them, but Exist, right? Maybe you even argue that Exist should be the favorite. They'll be right there. And then there's always challengers in the Northeast. Like, there's nobody that highly ranked, but we've seen upsets, and maybe it'll be wild card. I don't know if like Deadweight's out there. Darkwing was at this tournament. Like, there's always somebody. What could Leela Tennell and friends shows up or whatever, like some Canadian team. The Northeast is famous for this, so beware in the Northeast. But just 2 bids and clearly 3 nationals level teams. So at least that's what you're getting when you go into the drama there.
Yeah, I think the Northeast across the board feels like they came up pretty short this year. Just 2 bids per division. Bent unable to claw out that 3rd bid for the Northeast women's division. Goat and others coming up short in the men's division. And I think there was a lot of hope that there was going to be a 3rd bid really in both of those divisions, all 3, frankly. And it wouldn't have been totally out of place. On the other hand, did anybody really earn it? Did anybody really earn that 3rd spot? I think you could argue that Sprocket, could certainly, I mean, they're the last team out. But, you look at the men's division, I don't think there was a team that deserved a bid over, some of the other teams at the back end of the rankings that did. And I think the same thing's true in the women's division. Siege and Bent just didn't quite do enough. So I think, unfortunately, what that means is going to be pretty boring in those 2 divisions, men's and women's, because Pony and Dig have looked way ahead of everybody else. And the same is true for Sixers and Brute Squad. Now, Brute maybe is susceptible enough for you to talk yourself into Bent having a chance, but I don't think that I do.
I'm of the same mind, but again, Northeast Regionals legends foretell of many a good team left wanting. If you're in the Northeast men's, how secure do you feel with Goat and Sprout around? I don't know.
I don't know.
Dig certainly has looked apart. I mean, they're having the best year they've probably ever had. So I don't think they should be terrified or anything, but you don't want to go in overconfident. It's simply there's simply too much history of teams losing that way.
I saw Cody Mills at the airport, and he was on my flight back to New York. He, of course, former coach of Revolver, now coaching Pony, and he was sitting with some Pony guys. We were talking a little bit about regionals and about Devons and just like what an incredible atmosphere and environment Northeast regionals is. He's like, I don't really get this. Like, isn't it just regionals? And everyone was like, you'll understand when you get there.
I don't understand how the Southwest, I feel like, has the same reputation. So I don't know. You know,
I mean, there's crazy regionals, but I don't know. There's something special about Devons.
People do love
September,
Devons.
man.
That's true.
It's nice. It's so nice.
Other regions.
What else stands out?
Other regions where there could be a squeeze. The Northwest. I don't know why I couldn't say Northwest instead of Northeast. Northwest men's Furious finishes just outside, so we'll get that classic Furious Rhino sockeye. Plus, Emerald City's had some moments. So keep your eye on the Northwest. I think Furious is the real deal, even if I think that the teams ahead of them are probably a step ahead. So that's definitely a point of contention.
Furious and Emerald City played themselves by Emerald beating Furious a couple weeks back at the Bay Area tournament, 15-13, which basically tanked Furious's bid, which also tanks Emerald's chances of going to nationals. Like, they won the battle, but they lost the war, Keith.
Oh, I'm glad they didn't try and get in the system. The one of them that stands out to me, but is, probably not actually that surprising when you think about it, but just weird to see. Southwest mixed, a one bid Southwest mix. Who would have thunk?
I wish I had the stats in front of me. Like, when's the last time that
I'd have to go back and count it up. I wish I had, but
crazy.
That's not what you would have predicted to start the season. That's for sure. And you have your big winners. You have plenty of threes dotting the map, but
Southeast mix
has got to be the shocker of the year. This I looked it up, and this has not been a region that's had a lot of success. They had two bids. The year that Super Lame was good was that 2019. So it's not like they never had an extra bid before, but 3, that's a lot. And then they've never really had a really high ranked team. They could put in 2 top 8 seeds depending on how things go in the postseason. I mean, they have 2 teams that are in the top 8 of the rankings now. And so, this could be a big year for a banner season for the Southeast, kind of out of nowhere. I don't know if anybody really saw that coming. It depends on what you're going to make a Space Force. How
about Omen hanging on and getting a second bid for the Great Lakes in the men's division?
They were clinging to it. Clinging.
Feels like Omen probably won't be the team to earn the bid to nationals.
Ooh.
Like, that's how that's going to go.
Yeah, after all the waiting for it, it doesn't even go their way.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of teams that could take that spot.
It's fair. Probably the last seed at nationals will be their reward, but
let's take a look. So Great Lakes, you've got Trident at 22, Colonels at 32.
Yeah, definitely the last seed at nationals.
Maybe that's the extent of how far down the list you would go. But Omen, I believe, lost to Trident earlier this season and played a very close game against Colonels. So that's fun. That's like a Metro East College battle right there. Like, which team gets to go to nationals but not win a game at nationals?
Yeah, another big winner. I feel like the Mid-Atlantic men's. I feel like they're often are trapped with just 2 bids for 3 teams, and that is not the case this time around. Vault, Temper, and obviously Truck going to be the big favorites there, and with good reason. And I feel like they're used to having to settle for just 2, and Vault's going to get rewarded for their best season yet.
Think Phantom could steal a bid?
I have no idea how good Phantom is, to be honest with you. No Babbitt.
Neither do I. No, that was crazy. No, not this year.
So that's going to suck some of the life out of it, I think.
Otherwise, things mostly look about like you would expect. Your one bid regions this year in women's, Great Lakes, North Central, and South Central. South Central has just not really been able to get anything going outside of Molly Brown in recent seasons.
The opposite. I mean, no showdown anymore, so they can't even like.
Right.
That's usually been their team to try and do it. And now not only is that team not there, but they're also not there to challenge Molly Brown. I mean, has Molly Brown ever felt more confident going into regionals?
It's pretty disappointing. I mean, like they just don't even. They could send. They could randomly select 14 players for the weekend and probably still win easily. In the men's division, the North Central gets one bid. That's definitely correct. Presumably that will be Sub-Zero, but I don't know. Maybe Mad Men.
It's not impossible.
Did Mad Men come in as the higher ranked team at the end of the day, or did Sub-Zero get across that line? Let's take a look.
What was that? What'd you say about Mallard too?
I think Mad Men. Yeah, Mad Men is ranked ahead of Sub-Zero. 18th, Sub-Zero 24th. Mallard 1, 42nd. Mallard 2, 92nd.
Mallard 3.
It's just gonna make it an awesome story when they take the bid. And then in the mixed division, the one bid regions are Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, and Southwest. A little bit surprising that Mid-Atlantic only got one, but hard to see who that second team should be.
Well,
I think Raleigh came close, didn't they?
I think so. And Fleet was out there this past weekend, but let me see exactly where Raleigh ended up.
Raleigh was 19th.
That's within
Loco
range.
29th.
Yeah, that's the thing is they didn't have another top flight team, and again, this is another region where there was a huge vacuum left by Space Eater.
Right. So we will head towards sectionals coming up, starting this coming weekend, and I'm sure we're going to be some weird formats and some weird stuff going on, and then we'll get to regionals, and off we go on the march towards nationals. Any regionals matchups that you're already looking forward to, Keith?
We talked about a couple. What's going to happen in the back end of some of those regions that we said would be contentious. Women's division, Ozone and Tabby Rosa in the Southeast. That could be a little spicy. Could get into some drama there. I'm not looking back at the ones that we've already have discussed. The Northeast, we left out Siege from that conversation. They're another challenger in that region. There's nowhere else that I'm like, oh man, I gotta see this showdown. I don't think.
I mean, here, one thing I'll say. Probabilistic bid allocation is probably something that we should still be talking about more. You have a couple regions where there's multiple teams within a couple places of the cutoff. So like, for example, Northeast women's, right? Siege is 16th, Bent is 19th, and Starling is 24th. So you have these three teams all within 10 spots of earning a bid. And are you sure that they're actually worse than the last bid earning team, which was Nightlock? Like, I'm surprised Nightlock even got in. Like, they didn't play anybody outside of the West Coast, and it was like enough, I guess. Like, I don't know that Nightlock deserves a bid, to be perfectly frank.
I mean, I think they do in the fact, like, I imagine that they are one of the best 16 teams if you just threw them all in the ring together. But from their resume, perhaps not.
Right. Anyway.
I haven't looked at the connectivity visualizer, but I do think it's a little different than college, where there are just so many more teams playing in so many more bubbles that you can end up with teams really far away from the connectivity, so to speak. And that feels like it makes probabilistic more appealing. I feel like you're a lot less likely to have a weird outlier who didn't play anybody and like won 2 regional tournaments and gets a bid for that. I think that doesn't really happen in clubs. So to me, it's less of a problem here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you get Molly Brown and Traffic and Schwa providing a pretty good amount of cross-country connectivity to the West Coast. But a lot of those West Coast teams did not play out East at all. So, pretty interesting. And it should be a very fun series as we get rolling. Lots to come as we look ahead to the regional titles and lots of game film coming your way as well. Before we close it out, Keith, I wanted to ask you, we debuted Field Pass, a brand new streaming concept where we're showing you multiple games during the same round, sometimes split screen, sometimes 3-box. You were the anchor. What was your experience as a commentator? What'd you think?
It was really interesting. It was a very different experience as a commentator. It actually felt a little bit more like when we hosted some Twitch video review sessions in some ways. We had the Twitch channel active for a little while, and for those subs who were there, shout out to you back in the day. But it was a little more like a conversation about the games and a lot less of like, giving the blow by blow of a game. Obviously we were providing a lot of context and information about what was going on and about what it meant for the teams. But what was great was just being able to see everything at once and being able to remove some of the downtime and not missing a big play. Just knowing that you were going to get everything out of these 3 games and having 3 games that were going to be filmed as well. That was very cool. And people were so excited about it. It's just so many more fans get to be engaged when you have 6 teams on the screen instead of 2. And so, that there are parts about it that I think are challenging to execute and that I wonder about how they satisfy an audience. Everybody compares it to Red Zone, and there are people who don't like watching Red Zone. My dad thinks Red Zone's stupid. He hates it when he used to see me watching it. He I want to follow the game. So we try and do that in a way differently than Red Zone does. Like, I think we're a little more attached to each individual game. There's so many fewer that we're watching at a time, but it does give you a little bit, you lose some of that sticking with the game narrative. And in exchange, you get so many games, so much action at once, and it helps remove some of the downtime. So I thought it was a really cool experiment, and I'm very curious how fans thought about it and what the next application of it could look like.
Well, you can give us your feedback. Deep look at ultiworld.com, at deeplookpod on Twitter.
I'll tell you one thing, Charlie, that I got a lot of on Field Pass. I got a lot of bad bids.
Oh.
Yeah. I tweeted about this earlier, but there are a lot of bad bids at Pro Champs. That's what it felt like to me. And I don't know what it was. I mean, it felt like it was everywhere. You could see a team have a bad bid against them one game and the next game do it to somebody else. It wasn't bound by division. The finals, I think, were mostly pretty clean, although I can't say that I watched every single point of the finals. But yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Like, I felt like the community was talking about this more, that there had been a lot of progress, that people were thinking about this, people were presenting it to their teams more. I think the observers have done a much better job being more aggressive with the cards, trying to assert, hey, this is not an acceptable level of play. I definitely have seen more cards. There's just no way around it. But I saw a lot of
dangerous plays are getting auto yellows.
Yeah. And sometimes players are like, what? But that's fine. They're going to learn through the card system. But I don't understand why people were taking so many risks, so many misjudgments. I mean, I don't think it was, I saw a lot of people make a bad play and then look regretful after the fact, which is better than being remorseless and not understanding what you did wrong, but it's way worse than not doing it. So, we've seen multiple plays pop up on Twitter, videos of people making bad plays, making bad calls. I've seen people tweeting about even their own bad plays. I saw a tweet today about somebody saying, I feel really bad about a play that I made this past weekend. And all I can do is try and learn and grow. And that's true, but like we've got to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Captains, leaders, got to hold your team to a higher standard. Zach Smith replied when I tweeted about it, saying the same thing. Like, hey, I really think the community is kind of failing itself here. Like the leaders of these teams need to address this. You need to be stepping up, and like you don't need the other team to come over and get mad at you about a play. You need to pull your teammates aside. Say, hey, that's not cool. I mean, I've said on the podcast before, as a college coach, you have to sit the rest of the game if you make a bad bid, and I'm the final arbiter on that. You know, if I say it's a bad bid, it's a bad bid, and you're gonna have to sit for the rest of the game regardless of context.
People are not gonna make that decision in big spots. There's no way captains and coaches are gonna bench top players in big games at nationals because their top defender made a bad bid. Guarantee you.
Yeah, you have. I agree with you mostly, but I think ultimately it'll be better if we could get people to stop doing it, and if that requires putting yourself at a competitive disadvantage, I think that's more important and more valuable than it is to get the win. Like, I
appreciate your sort of high-minded view of this, but at the end of the day, I think that the answer to this problem is more punitive action on bad bids. Now, I think it's a big step forward to be giving yellow cards.
Yes.
Okay. That's a big step forward. It's been something I've been asking for years, and it's happening, which is great because it means that if somebody does it twice later, which is what should happen. Now, the other thing is when a dangerous play happens, bad bid, you know, somebody lays out through somebody's back, blows them up. The only outcome of that play should not just be a card. There has got to be, like, you should get sent back if you're on offense. And, you know, I guess it's more common that it's the defense, right? That makes a bad bid.
It is, but you got to make sure that the rule applies for either party.
Sure. But I mean, it's going to be different depending. So here's the pitch. Okay. Defense makes a bad bid into the offense. The offense automatically gets the disc at the attacking brick, or if it was past that point on the field, it's on the goal line. Like, you should have a massive yardage penalty assessed to you immediately. Or there needs to be a, you're out for the next 2 points. Like, if you commit the bad bid, you go into the penalty box type situation. Like, there's a middle ground between nothing really happens and you eject the player from the game. And we need to find somewhere in that middle ground to actually disincentivize these plays, because I hear what you're saying. Like, like, we can talk about it online. We can talk about it on the podcast. We can say that the coaches and captains should do this and that. But like, Keith, you're telling me that it's happening in every game and there's no consequences ever happening from any of it. So there has to be rules-based consequences. This is the only thing I think that's going to actually deter this kind of stuff.
Do we need to see more, tracking? Like, should we be?
Yes.
I guess that's hard for non-observed.
There should be publicly.
I mean, that's also the problem with the card thing. Is like, what do we do for games where there's no observers?
Well, that's a cop out. That's a cop out.
I'm not
just I'll hear this all the time. It's like, well, we can't have that rule because we don't have clock or observer or whatever at these games. But all of the major high level games have observers, have time kept, all of these things. And if they don't, then there just needs to be another mechanism. But like, and at nationals, every big game has observers.
And I can't say that I've been at a lot of mid-level unobserved games and seen a lot of bad bids because I haven't been there. That's not where I'm at. So I can't say that that's what's going on. But if it is, it requires a different solution to deal with that problem. And I'm happy to hear about what both the problem could be and what the solutions could be. But as far as sticking to high-level stuff, where there are observers, do we need a system where it's like, hey, if you get and this is in place, but does need to be more aggressive. Like, if you get 2 in a tournament, 3 in a tournament, like X amount in a season, do we need to publish the book? Does the log need to be public notice? You can see now who's got the bad bids.
It's public in every other sports league on the planet.
I know there's like kind of this hesitance to shame people. It's not about shaming people. It's about like holding people accountable. And making a bad bid doesn't mean you're a bad player. Doesn't mean that you have bad intent. But that doesn't matter to that person's MCL, whether or not you're a nice person with all the other times or whether or not you had intent. Like it's not relevant to how much danger you put the person in or yourself. So I don't understand why that those should be the limiting factors. Like we can do better. We can do better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is like a sort of norms culture thing to it, but I mean, this has been going on since all time, you know. Like, when have there not been bad backpacking bids? Probably better now than it was 10 years ago.
Just see
it's
it
probably
all.
better 10 years ago than it is 20 years ago. We have more video, and it's still happening. I mean, I wrote an article about this like 5 years ago when we were seeing tons of bad bids, and at the time there was basically no punishment at all. Sometimes there was a blue card. At least we're making slow progress towards actual punishment, but still, I think fundamentally there has to be a significant, like if you make a big nasty bid in the AUDL, it's a 20-yard penalty. And I think that doesn't even go far enough.
I wonder what the mechanics in an actual like game setting could be. You know, sitting out 2 points, that difficult to track, but doable.
And then do you play a player down, or do you get to replace them? I think you probably play a player down.
I think you probably get to replace them. I think it's a big shift and huge disadvantage to play down.
I agree. We can debate inside of that realm between zero punishment and ejected and play or down a player for the rest of the game, like a red card in soccer. But I think that there is somewhere in there that we could come to an agreement would be a better solution than the current sort of lack of penalty. Because like, I don't think I've ever, one player missed a game. Now I'm forgetting who it was. Was it at College Nationals?
I think it's Tony Vanieri.
It was Vanieri, right? Tony Vanieri missed a game because of 2 yellow cards over the course of like 2 games. And, you know, like, okay, that's literally the only time I've ever seen that, except for a game way back years ago in the Mid-Atlantic Regional Final when somebody got ejected for 2 yellow cards for just 2 horrendous bids. But I've literally never seen it other than that. And it seems like punishment should be a little more common than once every 10 years.
Yeah, given the state of things, I don't disagree with that. But I'm hopeful that this is like a step back from what I feel like we were taking a step forward, and it's just kind of like a blip on the radar, and you know, people had to check themselves. I feel like the same thing kind of happened in like the Western Ultimate League, right? They had a weekend, a high profile weekend with some bad plays. People talked about it, and I think things got better. They weren't erased from the game, but I think things got better after that. So hopefully this can be kind of like we need to rein this in kind of thing before we get to the series and nationals.
Let us know your thoughts. deeplook@oldtworld.com, @deeplookpod on Twitter. More Pro Champs coming up for subscribers in the Zone. No, it's not called
Out
that. Out the Back. Subscriber only bonus segment. In the Zone newsletter coming soon, by the way. My brain is holding many phrases in it at once. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.